Greetings and welcome to Patriot 6. I make tutorial videos for scenery building or modifications to scenery in Microsoft Flight Simulator 2020 utilizing SDK. Different people at different levels of skill see these videos. You may be here because you're curious, or you may already know the basics of scenery building. It is impossible for me to know who will click on a video. Because of the broad range of folks that view the videos, I include the basics in each video. This and all new videos will be built in chapters. You can find the chapters of the video in the description below. In addition, you can see the chapters on the video timeline if you want to skip the basic chapters. Let's talk about the tools that we need to build scenery. In most projects, it's very simple. The items which you use to build scenery are typically in your scenery library already. There are exceptions though. If you are bringing a 3D model into the sim, that would be an exception. If you are using the Earth to MSFS tool, that is another exception. And on occasion, you may need a text editor. I will explain the reason for the text editor once I do a video where the text editor is needed. For starters, put a folder on your desktop that you will use as your working scenery folder. I have one here and I will show you what I have in it. All I have in it is the SimpleScenery folder I downloaded from SDK, and I do have a thumbnail. In the SimpleScenery folders that you download through this version of SDK, a thumbnail is not mandatory because there is a standard thumbnail within the scenery package. However, on all of my projects, I choose to have a thumbnail, and it's your choice where you want to go with the standard thumbnail in the scenery folder or if you want your own. If you decide you want to make your own thumbnail, the thumbnail has to be the precise dimensions of this thumbnail I use, 412 by 170 pixels. No other size will work. So if you build your own thumbnail, please keep this rule in mind. To build scenery in Microsoft Flight Simulator 2020, you must be in developer's mode. And this is a very simple process, and I'll walk through it. First, you go to Options, go to General Options, you go to Developers, On, Apply and Save. Once in Developer's mode, you will see a menu appear at the top. I refer to this often as the Developer's menu. In addition to being in Developer's mode, you must have SDK, and this is a very simple process. You go up to the Developer's menu, you find the Help, you tick on Help, and then you tick on SDK Installer Core, and a window will open up and SDK will load in. And from that point, you can decide where you want the SDK. I'm going to tick off of this because I already have it. I put SDK on my C drive and I called the folder MSFS SDK, but you can place SDK where you want to place it. In addition to that, it's always good to go in and get the samples, and from the same help menu you want to go down to samples, and again you will download the samples. I'm going to stop it because I already have the samples. And once you download the samples, you can go into your SDK folder that you built, and you can find samples by ticking on the samples folder. And there's all kinds of samples here, but the one most often used is the one called SimpleScenery. Let's talk about the developer camera. The developer camera is something that is vital and something that you will use often. And to get to the developer camera, you go up to the developer menu, tick on Camera, and tick on Developer Camera. Operating the developer camera is a lot like operating the drone camera. So I'll show you the keys that we use to operate the developer camera. If we want to drop, we hit the F key. If we want to rise, we hit the R key. If we want to go left, we use the A key. And if we want to go right, we use the D key. If we want to go forward, we use the W key. And if we want to go in reverse, we use the S key. There's also some numerical keys that you can use. On the number pad, the 4 key will spin you, and the 6 key will spin you in the opposite direction. The 8 key will tilt your camera up, and the 2 key will tilt your camera down. Occasionally when you're building scenery, your azimuth will get off. So that's very easy to correct by using the 7 key or the 9 key. And then you can correct your azimuth. You can also use the mouse and freely move around. By holding down the left Alt key and by using your left mouse button, you're able to move anywhere you want to move. Also, you can use the mouse wheel to zoom in or out. Almost always, this is a process I go through. I'll tick on the developer camera. I will drop to the ground using the F key. Then I will use the left Alt key and the left mouse button to make sure I can spin in small areas. That is the fine control of the camera I'm looking for. What I don't want is this. You see what happened there? As soon as I got in and I used my mouse button to move, look how far I am from my aircraft. So again, to the developer camera, drop down with the F key, and with the left Alt key depressed and the left mouse button, make sure you can make minute movements. And now you're good to go and ready to use the developer camera. Hello friends, this is Patriot 6. If you have an interest in building your own airport, and you've arrived at this video first, then you need to see part 1 of this series, and I will link part 1 in the description below. So go to part 1, and once you place the runways, you can stop there and come to this video. For those of you that watched all of part 1, thank you for coming back. And for those of you that watched part 1 and completed all the steps in part 1, I owe you an apology. I didn't realize in part 1 that the textures I placed on the ground would take priority over taxiways. Unfortunately, it does take priority over taxiways. For part 2, I had to remove the texture, so if you've added textures, you may have to do the same thing. Again, I apologize, but on a good note, I have to redo them also. So we're in this together. To begin, of course, I'm in developers mode. I'm going up to the Dev menu, Tools, open the project editor, and I'm going to open the inspector from the view window on the project editor. And now I'm going to open the project. Navigate to the working scenery folder. Locate the project. Open the folder. Navigate to the bottom XML and open. Once it loads in and I can see the project in the project editor window, I want to tick on the project and I see the information in the inspector, and that's good. I'm going to the Scenery BGL and load in editor and wait for the objects to load in. The objects are now loaded in, so here's what I did to remove the textures. I went down to the scenery editor, all of the polygons, and I removed all of the textures simply by ticking on them in the scenery editor and deleting. So once I was done with that, all I have left in the scenery editor are the 2 runways and the airport mast that I placed earlier out here. And if you actually applied the ground textures, that's the state you want to be in now. The first thing I'm going to do is add one large polygon to clear out the buildings and the trees and give me some room to work here. Now I'm going to be clearing out the buildings that I know need to be cleared out based on what I recall from part 1. You should already know how to build a polygon, but if you do not, then I will link a video below that shows you how to use polygons. On the Objects menu, I'm going to change from Scenery to Polygon. And I'm going to tick Add. And with my left control key down, and I'm going to use the left mouse button to set the anchor points of the polygon. I'm going to follow this road around here. All the way down to the golf course. And once a polygon is complete, you double click to end the polygon. Now I'm going to bring up the properties from the scenery editor. And on the properties window, I'm going to exclude all buildings. And now I'm going to drop down to vegetation and move the top 2 sliders to the left. Now we have a clean area to work with. We do have the images of the buildings, which I will cover up later with textures. These buildings should only be 2-dimensional images on the aerial photography. That appears to be the case. And now I'm going to place some rectangles here. The only purpose of the rectangles is just to give me visual cues to draw the taxiways. And I'm going to add some rectangles for the tarmac textures. You may be very good at drawing a straight line, but I cannot draw a straight line. So these temporary rectangles I place will help keep me in line. So up on the Objects window, I'm going to find Rectangle, and I'm going to add. And I want this rectangle to be parallel to the runway. And the way I'm going to do that is to tick on the runway, bring up the properties, and on the properties of the runway, I see the heading is 325 degrees. So now I'm going to tick on the rectangle. And over on the gizmo, on the second line far right, is the heading. And I'm going to type 325 in the heading. And now the rectangle is parallel to the runway. And now I'm going to make this rectangle larger. So I'm going to take it up to a scale of 3. Now there's a lot of ways to do what I'm doing. You're free to do it however you want, but this works for me. With the rectangle in place, I'm going down to the scenery editor and duplicate. And I'm going to duplicate and add another. And I'm going to duplicate and add another. And another. And 2 more. That gives me good visual cues to work with. I'm now going to repeat the same steps on this runway. So I'm going to copy this rectangle and move it up to here. And this runway is heading 195, so I'm going to turn this rectangle to the same heading as the runway. And now duplicate and add to the other side. And now with rectangles all over the place to keep me in line, I'm going to duplicate one more. And move it right here for right now. Now I'm going to size up this rectangle to roughly the size of the tarmac that I want. And you can edit rectangles by grabbing any of the nodes on it and extending them. So I'll start with this node here. And now I'm going to do the same with this rectangle. I'm going to change the size of this rectangle to the size of the tarmac. Keep in mind, I don't really have a plan. I'm just flying by the seat of my pants and going by imagination. I have nothing drawn out or planned. Now I'm going to use this rectangle here as a guide to draw a polygon. This will help me to draw a uniform polygon, which I would not be able to do without a guide. So up on the Objects window, I'm going to change to Polygon. As before, I'm going to tick Add and build the polygon. Double-click, the polygon's complete. And with the polygon selected and the Properties window up, I'm going to take a look at the materials. I'm looking for a Sobo concrete here. I'm going to use a square 01 white. And now what I want to do is find the rectangle. And you can always look over here in the scenery editor to make sure you have the rectangle ticked. And I have it ticked, and I'm going to remove it. Alright, we're through with that rectangle. And now in this rectangle, I'm going to draw a polygon using this rectangle as a guide. And with the Properties window still up, a Sobo concrete, square white, and I'm going to pull it up into the materials. And now I want to select this rectangle. And if I look over in the scenery editor, I am on the rectangle and I can delete. Now we have our two tarmacs built. At this point, I'm going to save the scenery. And now I'm going to start placing taxiways. To me, this is the most tedious part of the job. So we'll see how it goes. I have a plan and hopefully everything works out. But on the Objects window, we want to change to Taxi Point. Not path or sign, but point. And I want to make sure normal is ticked. And I'm going to use one-click placing. And with the one-click placing, you see the little blue thing follow me around. And once I draw a point, I'm going to tick on the runway point here. And I'm going to add the parameters that I want for the taxiway. I'm going to do centerline lit, centerline enhanced, the edge is lit, and I'm going to select solid line on the edges. And I'm also going to change the width from 30 meters down to 20 meters. And now with the changes made, I want to tick off of the path and tick on this node. And you can always look over in the scenery editor to see what you're ticked on. And I'm ticked on what I want to be. I'm going to right click and tick create path. Go back to objects window and tick on one click placing. And now I'm going to continue on with the taxiway. If I make a mistake like I did here, I can clean that up later. I want to add some nodes along the way here. I want to tick on the taxi path here. And I'm going down to split path. And now back to my one click placing. And now I'm going to save the scenery. So let's go down to these paths here and change. And what I want to do is get rid of the side lines and only leave the center line. And over on the properties, I'm going to select none for the left edge and none for the right edge, and remove the lights. Going to do the same for this path. And while I'm here, I need to find a node right here. And now I want to change on the properties window. I want to change this from normal to hold short. And the arrow's pointing that way, so that's correct. Going to do the same at this node. From normal to hold short. This one is facing the wrong way, so up on the properties window, I'm going to change it from forward to reverse. And there we go. While I'm here, I can clean up any of the nodes if they look a little strange because I did them from a distance. I'm trying to make it a little uniform. Of course, you can spend as much time on this as you want getting it perfect. Let's make this a hold short. Change from normal to hold short. Let's get rid of the edge lines here to none on the right and left edge. Do that with all the taxi paths on the runway. Okay, this looks like a dog's hind leg, so let's clean this up a bit. Let's create a hold short here. Properties window. On the properties window, change from normal to hold short. And this is also reversed, so we need to go up to orientation and reverse it. Make this one a hold short. And it's facing the right direction. Get rid of our lines here. Leave the center line, but remove the side lines. Let's change this one to a hold short. Type from normal to hold short. And we see it has to be reversed. Same process on this end. A little bit of straightening. We'll make this a hold short. And it's in the right direction, good. And remove the lines. But make sure you tick on the path. We'll place a hold short at this node. And it's facing the wrong direction, so again, reverse it. Save the scenery. Have hold shorts here, and hold shorts here. So now we have taxiways, we have a tarmac, and we have a tarmac over here. Let's get rid of the rectangles. So in the scenery editor window, I'm just going to type RECT. And each rectangle I'm going to delete. Like I said, you can mess with this stuff as long as you want to. If you see something that looks a little funky, well, you can go in and adjust it. This is where that truck just stopped. I kind of gauged this pretty well. So let's go ahead and add some material for this road. So I'll do that with a polygon. Looks like the trucks are running down through here. Okay. Now let's just go find the asphalt material. Bring up the material editor again. Let's find a Sobo asphalt. Here it is. And probably want to find a white asphalt. Here's a white main. We'll try that. This is a good place to stop on part 2. So again, we want to test it. So let me remove the properties window and save the scenery and go up to the project editor. Tick on the project. Make sure the inspector is highlighted and build the package. Once a package is built, I'm going to remove the console. I'm going to tick off the tools and the scenery editor. And I'm going to bring up the working scenery folder and my community folder. And I want to go into project, open, packages, open, copy the package, place it in the community folder temporarily, and let's restart the simulator. Okay, back in the simulator, let's see if we can find our runway. So that will be KNSS. Hey, there it is. Now right now all we should have is starting points, so let's zoom to details. Got a few dog legs in the taxi. I didn't notice that. It's easy to straighten up later though. When I come back in part 3, I'm going to have to do some terraforming here. That's going to be a little bumpy. So it looks like we have access to everything. So let's see what it looks like at night. You see our taxi lights. What we'll do in part 3, I may extend this runway over here to make a connection, because I can see where that would be logical. If you were coming and you needed to get on this runway, you have access here, and you have access here to this runway. So it seems logical that we'd want to draw a line to here and perhaps connect it over to here somewhere, just to make a shorter path. Outside of that, I think it's okay. I will do the terraforming, as I said, on these locations. And in part 3, we'll start adding hangars and lighting, clean up some more of the trees, maybe add the texture. I think in part 3, I'll complete all of the physical layouts of the runway, all of the little bells and whistles I want to add, and ancillary scenery. In the final episode, I'll take a look at perhaps adding ILS to the runway, at least this runway here. So with that, I will close out part 2. I thank you for hanging out with me and getting through this. And until part 3, this is Patriot 6, and I'll see you soon.